Today we're going to talk about the capabilities of the GEMPro, the Prescriber account, which is used to create a patient record, training your patients on how to take the GEMPro home and perform a successful GEMPro study, and finally we're going to talk about reviewing these great reports generated by the GEMPro. First, let's talk about system components. The GEMPro comes in a really nice case, and in the case is a Galaxy Tab E Android tablet. And there's pre-installed several apps that we're going to talk about here. The first app is the PhysioPlex for Bruxism. That's the Bluetooth icon, and that has two primary purposes. First is for the prescriber sets up a patient account, and second, it's used for data acquisition for patients when they take the device home and do a study. The second app that we install is the Gold Tooth icon, which is PhysioPlex for Bruxism Professional. This app has several very cool advanced features, including archives all your raw data. That allows you to open up the app and look at any patient you've done a GEMPro study on. You can regenerate the reports, you can prune the data, scroll through, look at the raw data. It's a great app. It's very affordably priced, and if you're interested, let us know on how you can get that app activated. We also have a PhysioPlex Debug app, and that's going to be used by GEMPro support agents primarily to help us troubleshoot should you have any problems with the GEMPro. And then finally is the quick support, which we're using for our training, our live training sessions, and we also use it for tech support as well. With regards to sensors, there's two sensors. First is the oximeter. It's a wrist pulse oximeter that measures oxygen desaturations and heart rate. Oxygen desaturations are also known as SpO2. So if you ever see that term, that's referring to. And the second sensor is the BioBrux amplifier. And the BioBrux amp measures snoring, bruxism, and body position. The GEMPro capabilities. First, it assesses the likelihood that your patient may or may not have sleep apnea. The key word there is likelihood. Second, we distinguish between your patients that snore and your patients that snore and have sleep apnea, which is critical to know if you're going to treat somebody for snoring. Number three, provide objective data on the cause or triggers of parafunctional activity or bruxism. Number four, the GEMPro, this is a very, very cool feature. It can distinguish between idiopathic bruxism and airway-triggered parafunction, two completely different disorders with completely different treatment modalities. And up until now, it's been a little tricky to distinguish between the two, but now we can get objective data on that. Number five, allows for a more effective restoration protection strategy. What does that mean? Well, in the case where you have, for example, airway-triggered parafunction, that person's worn down their dentition as a result of their airway issue, the teeth have been capped, there are edentulous restoration implants, whatever the case might be as a result of this. So you do whatever it is you're going to do, let's say implants for your patient. Well, this condition is still going on. So then your work, your implant, your rehab, what have you, is now under the same forces that caused this issue in the first place. In many cases, the cause can be managed, and if you can manage the cause, your restoration will have a much more likely chance of being successful over time. And number six, ensure that the dental implants, or whatever it is you've done for your patient, does not reduce the performance of the airway, and then actually also has the intended outcome. Okay, so that's the capabilities of the GEMPro. The GEMPro data pathway. First, let's talk about the sensors. The wrist pulse oximeter and the BioBrux amplifier are both Bluetooth-enabled devices, and the tablet that we've been talking about has Bluetooth receiver built in. So there's no wire between the sensors and the data collection device. So that's very nice, makes it easier to use. And that's done by pairing the two Bluetooth devices to the tablet. Once the tablet has collected the data in the morning, that app, the PhysioPlex for Bruxism app, processes the raw data into a very nice PDF report, and will either send that report in the morning from the patient's house if by chance they've connected to Wi-Fi, or more often, when the tablet gets returned to your dental office, there's a mechanism where the tablet will automatically send you an email that contains, as an attachment, the patient's PDF report. Okay, for our initial training, so when you set up a training session with your GEM support agent, one of the first things they're going to want to do is connect the tablet to Wi-Fi. It's the same exact process that any Android phone goes through. That is, you swipe down, you select the settings icon, and depending on the version of Android you have, it'll either say Wi-Fi or connections, and you select that. You'll be presented with a list of Wi-Fi connections. You select your connection, enter your password. Be sure and put a check next to automatically connect, and we're done. So every time your tablet comes into your office, it will automatically connect to Wi-Fi. You won't have to repeat this step. Okay, so when you first receive your GEMPro and you're getting ready to use it for the first time, the sensors, that is the wrist pulse oximeter and the BioBrux amplifier, are rechargeable, meaning you don't have to swap out batteries, but you do have to charge them up. First, the black USB cable system is to recharge the wrist pulse oximeter. So the black USB cable and the black wall plug are designed to charge up the oximeter. On the side of the oximeter, just next to where you plug the USB cable into the oximeter, there's a small LED light there. That light may be orange, red, yellow, whatever the case may be. When the oximeter is fully charged, it will turn green. Similar with the BioBrux amplifier, you plug the white USB cable system into the bottom of the BioBrux amp, and there's again a small LED lamp or LED indicator, and when that indicator is green, that it means that your BioBrux amp is fully charged. I might also add that there's a blinking green light when the amp is turned on, and when there's a double blink on the main LED light on the front, that indicates that the amp can be charged up. All right, so now we're going to talk about creating a patient study using the Prescriber login. So there's a couple of steps here. We're going to talk about logging in as a prescriber. And when you purchase a GEMPro, there's a process by which we collect some information, and then from that information we collect, such as your contact information, the correct spelling of your name, and the email address you'd like your reports emailed to. We create a prescriber login credential for you, and we'll email it to you and have it on record. So if you ever lose it or want to create a new one, what have you, it's very easy for us to do that. Once you log in using that credential that we've provided, you'll fill out basically a two-page form. It's pretty simple. Page 1 of the form is about your patient. Page 2 is about the study. So if you ever try to do a study and it says there's no study information, that means page 2 wasn't filled out. So be sure to do both pages. Page 2 is designed to provide information on the test. For example, how many nights are you going to do? Are you going to do 1 night, 2 nights, what have you? And then how many hours per night? The default settings are 3 nights and 5 hours per night. And then finally, there's a reason for the study. Anytime you're doing a test, it's a good idea to know why you're doing the test, because other people may end up looking at this report and say, okay, why am I looking at this report? And then it will say suspect bruxism or suspect snoring or whatever the case might be. Finally, on page 2, we're going to pair the 2 sensors, that is the wrist pulse oximeter and the BioBrux amplifier, to the tablet. Very simple thing. You turn on the wrist pulse oximeter, you turn on the BioBrux amplifier, and then you just hit scan. So it's that easy. Okay. So getting started, you type in your USB or your credential, your email, and the password we've provided you, and you'll go to this page. This is page 1 of the form I was just talking to you about. So the first field that you'll fill out is the unique patient ID. This is a required field, and this is designed to allow for the office to enter the patient's number if you assign one. If you don't assign one, because it is a required field, you can just put like the number 1 in there for everybody. It's date of birth. Well, actually, let me say, patient name, you just fill that out. That's obviously a required field. And the patient email address is also required and does need to be unique. because the patient email is what we call the key field in our database, so that there can only be one assigned per patient, one email address assigned per patient. Now, next we're going to go into date of birth field. So you click the date of birth field, and this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a month. I believe by default, it will always go to May 1987 for some reason. But you use the left and right arrow key to go to the month, and then you click the day, pretty simple, and click OK. To select the year, you go on the left-hand side, it'll say 1987. You click 1987, and then you'll be presented with a list of years or a column of years. You scroll to the right column, you select it so it's blue, and you click OK, and that's all there is to it. Tooth wear rating. Okay, this is something that we wanted to do because we are so focused on bruxism and tooth wear and identifying its causes and triggers that for the type of wear, we present 4 options there: attrition, abrasion, erosion, and infraction. And then you click on the tooth wear score at the bottom, and it allows you to rate the level of damage or the number of teeth affected by the wear you've selected. Next, really important topic, report-only PIN. Okay, the tablet generates this number. And for the purpose of our initial training for the PhysioPlux for Bruxism app, the report-only PIN is what we recommend. And it will always start with an R for report only. And then there'll be, in this case, R3Z4. When you do your first patient, there will obviously be a different number there. The idea here is this is what the patient uses to log in to the tablet and start their study. So what we recommend you do is fill out an appointment card and put this number on the appointment card and put it in with the GEMPro when you send it home with the patient. The other thing that we recommend is that you maybe keep a log and say patient, whatever the patient's name is, and then put this PIN that you've assigned to that patient on that log. The reason being is that if the patient does not connect to Wi-Fi on their home, and they don't have to, when you receive the GEMPro back from that patient, you just type in that PIN and the tablet will automatically send you the report through email. Okay, so that's why we recommend keeping that. Once you've done or completed filling out or documenting the PIN, both for your patient, for your own records, click register and next. And you'll be going to the second page of the form. And this is the study information. And on the left-hand side, there's the 3 items. I kind of mentioned them earlier. The first field is number of nights per study. And this is just like what it says, just fill out the number of nights the patient's going to do. If you put 1 and you decide later to do 2, the patient could do 2 nights. They just use their same PIN number, and it will allow you to use that PIN number again. Okay, so that's no biggie. Minimum number of nights per, or number of hours per study. We recommend 5 is the minimum. You know, be honest, probably 6 is ideal. I think, you know, if we're going to talk about sleep, on average, we recommend that people get 7 hours of sleep. If you want to kind of use that as an idea or an ideal, that's perfectly acceptable. And finally, reason for the test. I mentioned this earlier. There's a drop-down list of several reasons for the test. Just pick one that's most appropriate to why you're doing the study on the patient. Second thing that we're going to do on this page is pair the 2 sensors to the tablet. Really, really simple. Just turn the 2 sensors on. Wait till you have a blinking green light on the BioBrux amplifier, and you do that by clicking the little black switch up, and then you'll see the blinking light. Once you do it once, it's a simple thing. And then the oximeter, press and hold the blue button on the front of the oximeter. It's kind of hard to miss that button. And the screen will, the LCD screen will turn on, and you simply press either one of those scan buttons, the little microphone, or excuse me, the magnifying glass next to where it says scan. You click either one of those, it'll find both devices, and we're done. It's really, really important that you click done. If you don't click done, nothing on this page gets saved. Okay, so just be sure you click done. You are ready to go. This page here is kind of showing you how to turn the amp on and how to turn the oximeter on. The turning the amp off is you just flip the switch down. On the oximeter, however, it's a little bit more to it. We don't want people turning the oximeter off by accident, so there's a kind of an extra step to prevent that unintended consequence. So to turn the oximeter off, you press and hold the blue button, and then there's a menu there. You tap the blue button 6 times to where power off is highlighted, and then you press and hold again. Okay? All right, so once you've clicked done and the sensors are paired, we're ready to hand the tablet over, or the GEMPro over to the patient. So now we're going to transition to how do you present doing a GEMPro study at home to your patients. A couple things about this. First is I would recommend being as kind of benign as possible, because dental sleep medicine, there's a propensity to say, oh, this is a life-threatening illness, sleep apnea. I'm here to save your life. There's this kind of foreboding sense for a lot of people about sleep apnea. And that's not to say that's not true, but when you're working with patients, that's not a good starting point. So I recommend calling the device the wellness monitor. Say something to the effect, we're going to send this device home. It's going to kind of measure the quality of your sleep on a variety of parameters, and we're just going to see what's going on when you're asleep. You might want to put in a little more benign detail than that if you'd like, but don't overwhelm your patient with information about sleep apnea and so on and so forth. Okay, this is just a recommendation. Okay, so from your patient's perspective, we just were talking about the prescriber login. We're going to switch gears. The PhysioPlux for Bruxism app has 2 modes, prescriber mode and patient mode. We're going to talk about patient mode now. Now, remember, I had you fill out an appointment card with the 4-digit PIN. You're going to hand the patient that PIN, kind of make a big deal about it. Say, here's your PIN, and you will need the PIN in order to start your study. Okay, and all the patient needs to do is to take that PIN, type in that 4-digit PIN under patient login, and they're off and running. This is the screen once the study started, and it will have their name on there, and they click next. I might add at this point that the tablet has a demo mode, so you can actually, instead of typing in an actual PIN, just type in the word demo, D-E-M-O, and you can walk your patient through what we're going to go through now. Okay, so D-E-M-O. Once they verify their name is there, go ahead and click the next button. After they click the next button, the patient is going to need to turn on the amp and turn on the oximeter. So just like you, the prescriber, had to pair the 2 sensors to the tablet, the patient has to do it right before they start their study. So this is where you might show them how to turn on the amp and the oximeter. Once they turn that on and click next, they're going to be presented with a screen here. And this screen is doing a couple of things. It's looking in the environment for sensors. So that's why we turn the sensors on, because when you're on this screen, you're going to have 3 red X's, and then as soon as the tablet starts finding the sensors, things will start turning green. And it does that automatically. The patient really doesn't have to do anything once the sensors are turned on. And that third option where it says tablet plugged to power, the patient does have to plug the tablet into the wall. So on the top edge of the tablet, there's a power plug, and they plug that in, and they use the white cable system, and they just plug it into the wall. Once all 3 items are green, they're free to start swiping. Now, swiping is a new thing for many of us. So you might show your patient, if you're using demo mode, let them swipe. You just touch the screen and go from one side to the other, and it will take you to the next screen. I will say, alternatively, there's a little white arrow key, white arrow key on the upper right-hand corner, and they can click that if for some reason they're adverse to swiping. And it's going to walk them through everything they need to be walked through to start their study. The next question is going to be, are you wearing an appliance or therapy? Yes or no. Some of your patients might be on CPAP. Maybe you want to do a test on CPAP, see how they're doing. Maybe you want to see if they're still snoring, or maybe their teeth grind when they're wearing CPAP. Who knows? It's not unusual. So if they're wearing some type of therapy, click yes, and then obviously if they're not, then click no. Swipe to the next screen, And this page is going to give you instruction on how to attach the BioBrux amplifier to the patient. So there's two parts to this. BioBrux amp measures surface EMG at the masseter, so we have to tell the patients how to find the masseter. So I use the term locate masseter by biting down as hard as you can and feeling for your cheek muscle bulge. And you put the white foam pad on that bulge in the vertical orientation, just like you see in the picture. The second part is you want to attach the BioBrux amp, so it's kind of pointed up, and there's a little arrow on the front of it. That's what the arrow's for. That points up. There's two clips. One of the things that I recommend is if you're sitting with your patient, have them operate that little clear clip on the back of the BioBrux amp, because it does take a little bit of effort, and you kind of lift instead of pinch. So a lot of people, when they think of a clip, the inclination is to pinch, but on the white or clear clip, you have to lift, and you'll see it opens it up. Once you do it once, it's really easy. And you put that on your pajamas or your shirt near kind of your masseter, so the cable can get to there with the EMG lead. And then there's a black cable with a traditional clip, and you kind of put a little tension on that and grab somewhere else on your shirt or pajamas, and you create a little bit of tension on the amp. The reason that we do that is the amp has a body position sensor in it, and we want to keep that fairly stable and in the vertical orientation. And on this screen, we're showing you if you click swipe after you attach the amp, then this page shows you that the amp is detecting body position correctly, and it will actually say okay. It's kind of hard, there's some typing over there. It says confirm BioBrux amp is in the proper orientation up, and it will actually say okay on there. Once you do that, or just confirm, there's really nothing to do there. You swipe again. And on this page, we're giving instruction on attaching the wrist pulse oximeter. Put it on like a watch, and then you put the finger probe on your finger. A lot of people ask which hand to put it on. I recommend the non-dominant hand, but it's really not that big a deal. And then put the finger probe on the index finger. The reason being, those are the easiest hand and finger to deal with. So if you put it on the non-dominant hand, you're using your good coordinated hand to put the oximeter on. Once the finger probe's on, you do have one option. This is kind of a tip. If you want to provide a little roll of paper tape in the GEMPro kit, totally optional. And you can put a little strip of tape across the back of the hand there. Okay, so pretty simple. Okay, so then when you click swipe from the finger probe and oximeter slide, this is where we do a waking bite force test, and you click the play button. Okay, it's the kind of the lighter blue button with the triangle, and on that button, once you start that, you just watch the guy's forehead, and it's going to say clench or bite down as hard as you can. Once you get to the first clench, you'll see that blue bar go up. And then when you relax, the guy's forehead will say relax, and then it goes down. So it's kind of cool. People will kind of get into it, and it's like bite down as hard as you can, and you try to get the blue bar to the top. And then when you relax, it goes to the bottom. Okay, we collect 4 bites just to make sure we get the strongest. And then this page actually turns automatically to the next page. And this page is pretty easy. You just click the play button, and it's the same type of button that we just were talking about. You click play, and the sensor, the BioBrux amp sensor, is going to listen to the room for ambient room noise, and we kind of use that information when we look at the snoring. Okay, this takes 10 seconds, and then the app will automatically advance to the next page, which here is going to it's a summary page, and then we do actually recommend one thing, although it's not necessary, but we highly recommend it. If you'll notice on the amp, when you turn the amp on, there's a blinking green light. And if you notice, that kind of goes somewhere around your shoulder. So that blinking green light's kind of near your face. And so here, when you get to here, just above the next button, there's a little blue dot that you click, and that little blue dot is going to turn off that LED light. You put some importance on that when you explain it to your patient, because if they don't do that, half your patients are going to tell you, geez, that blinking green light was kind of annoying. And you obviously are not going to want to turn the amp off, because then you don't want to get any data. But click the little blue light that turns the LED light off but leaves the amp on. Okay? When you click next after you turn the LED light off, the patient's done pretty much with starting the test. There's a 10-minute timer, and then the test is going to start by itself. Okay. We recommend taking the 10 minutes. It gives the patient a moment to relax. Remember, the tablet will stay on all night. And so the tablet needs to be put somewhere so the light doesn't bother the patient. There is about a 25-foot range from the sleeping location to where the tablet can be. So if you want to put the tablet in a drawer or under the bed so the light from the tablet doesn't bother you, fine. And then in the morning, once the study starts, the patient goes to bed. They have 10 minutes to relax, and then hopefully soon after that they're sleeping. On this screen where it says study acquiring, this is what the acquisition screen looks like. Patients really don't need to know anything about this. I will say if they forget to turn the LED light off, there's another opportunity here. That orange arch is kind of the study progress bar. And when that orange arch reaches that blue hash mark is at the 5-hour mark. So when you get to 5 hours, that orange arc turns green, and that means the patient has achieved their goal of how many hours you've set them up to sleep for. The most important thing to tell your patient during acquisition, okay, most important. If they get up for any reason, most common reason is to go to the restroom. They do not have to do anything. Just go to the restroom. If they go out of range, past the 25 feet, when they come back in range, the tablet will sense they're back in range and it will resume the study. It does that automatically. The reason that we stress that is people have an inclination, and rightly so, that says, oh, geez, I got to get up. What do I need? Should I pause this thing? What do I need to do? And typically, if they're in that mode, they'll start poking around, and then they may end up ending the study or minimizing the app. A number of undesirable things can happen. So we made it so everything's automatic during the study. The only thing they really need to do is at the end of the test, they click End Test. That's it. When they do that, and this is what the screen looks like, they click End Test, that's when the tablet will go through an analysis period that takes about 5 seconds. And for about 5 seconds, it's going to analyze all the raw data that it's collected from the Apnea oximeter. It's going to generate a PDF report, and then it's either going to save it in the case where we're not connected to Wi-Fi. If the patient happened to connect to their home Wi-Fi, that's fine. They can optionally do that, and then the report will be sent. So it's kind of cool. It's conceivable that if they get up at 5:30 in the morning, you have a report in your inbox on email at 5:31, and you'll see exactly how the study went home for the patient. Most patients, however, are not going to connect to Wi-Fi. When you get the tablet back, you just type in their 4-digit code under patient login field, and you'll get the report at that time. This is a screen that the patient sees. This is where I said there's a kind of a generation of the report. This is what that looks like. I should add that if the patient wants to see the raw data, they can. So in the morning when we get done processing the data, there's a bunch of graphs. The patient can click these tabs and look at their study if they want. It's fine because we've already saved the report or sent it, depending on if they're connected to Wi-Fi or not. They can click next if they choose to, and then once they do that, it's going to say you're done, and you just click OK. Okay. Again, this slide here is if you do want your patient to connect to Wi-Fi, or they say, oh, can I use my home Wi-Fi? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Here's how you do it. This slide here kind of shows patients how to connect to the tablet Wi-Fi when they're at home. Okay, so let's talk about reports. This is our final chapter here. We're going to talk about reports. The reports have a number of graphs, and that's our bell. We're kind of running at the final stretch here. The first graph, the SpO2, kind of documents oxygen desaturations by body position. So the color of the graph indicates the position of sleep at that point in time during the test. So it's very easy to tell if whatever it is we're looking at is positional. Hallmark parameters in the graph are there's a dotted blue line for the SpO2. That's at 89%. Most people need to spend their night above 89%. And in this case, this particular graph looks like the patient's spending most of the night below 89%. This patient has a very high likelihood of having sleep apnea. The second graph, HR analysis. Here we're looking for two things: the presence of braided tachycardia and the consistency of the cardiac response to a patient's sleep apnea. So, for example, in the graph that you're looking at, if you look here, kind of, in the middle of the graph, the patient's desatting down to 80, looks like 80 or 74%, and their heart rate is at 75. So that's odd that you have this very severe desat and your heart's not responding to it. So you want to make sure that the heart rate is consistent with the patient. When it's not, like such as the case here, that indicates that the patient is very severe and has been for a long period of time, and the body's autonomic response to these oxygen desaturations has been dulled, or there's just no response at all. This is a sign that the patient's very sick. Okay. The third graph, Bruxism analysis. This is, we measure bruxism on two vectors, magnitude and frequency. So we have the case where we did that bite force. Remember, we did that cal? In this case, when the person was asked to bite down as hard as they could when they were awake, the biocal max force was 189. And if you're wondering about the units of measure, that's microvolts. During the night max force in this case was 273. The patient is actually biting down harder when they're asleep than when they're awake. So the magnitude, we would say, is high. With regards to frequency, we have 5 boxes or buckets that we create. The first 2 buckets are 10% and 25% of the cal. So these are weak bursts, and we all do that. And in most cases, we don't really put a lot of emphasis on these first 2 boxes. We're more interested in 50%, 75%, and 100% or more of the cal max. These are events that qualify as clenches or grinds. So in this case, the patient had 15 parafunctional events that qualify as a clench or a grind in a 6-hour study. 15 per night, that's a high number. So this patient is positive for both magnitude and frequency. The next graph, audio analysis, is for snoring. Yeah, this patient kind of had intermittent snoring. I will tell you, there's 2 reasons for intermittent snoring. Patient snores is positional, meaning they snore on their back and they don't snore on their side. That's not the case here. Or the patient is awake. And that's why they're not snoring. So those are the 2 reasons why a heavy snorer isn't snoring. Okay. And then finally, the calibration. This is just a graph of the waking cal test. So we said bite down as hard as you can, and you can see these graphs here are what we're talking about. So at this point, I'm going to show you a couple of example reports, and I'm not going to talk a lot about them, but just so you get a sense of the type of data you'll be seeing. This first report here is a severe apneic, and you can see that the dotted blue line there on the SpO2 analysis, there's a lot of high number of oxygen desaturations below that dotted blue line. You might be interested to note that the yellow section, where it looks like, oh, look, for a period of time, they're okay. And I will say that it's very, very likely that patient was awake. Because if you look at the heart rate just below it, the heart rate's also very normal compared to the rest of this graph. And when you see somebody that's severe and then has this kind of normal period, they're almost always awake. Next graph is the same patient, and we see that the bruxism is normal. Okay, so we weren't really suspecting bruxism, but I will tell you this patient had a waking cal value of 77, and the night was 47, so they're not clenching as hard when it's asleep. And you can see the number of events past 50% of 7. That's some, but when you have the severity of those oxygen desats that this patient has, this is almost kind of takes a back seat. And then the snoring is off the charts. I mean, it's obvious this patient's a severe snoring, and then snore in all positions. So, okay, next patient. This is a patient that slept on their back all night long. Okay, and one of the reasons I chose this graph is you can see there is a DSAT down to 89%, and you can see the patient's heart rate rose to 90%. So this is a normal heart rate response to an oxygen desaturation. Okay, this is what you would expect to see. What you don't expect to see is like what we saw with that other patient. They were desatting much lower, and they weren't having nearly the cardiac response that they should have. Okay, so that's an example. We look at this patient, the same patient that slept on their back, normal heart rate, normal SpO2 or oxygen desaturations. However, but this patient has very severe bruxism. And I use the term bruxism just so you know, my personal use of bruxism versus parafunction. Parafunction is kind of a more general term. Bruxism, I use bruxism when there's a significant amount of parafunction and it's not related to the airway, or we suspect that it's not related to the airway because the SpO2 and the snoring are normal. Yet we see a tremendous amount of bruxism, which is the case here. So we have a patient that's their airway is fine, tremendously worn teeth, and profound bruxism. And here's why it's profound. Their night biocal max force was 72, and their night max force is 324. So their magnitude is at the bottom where it says biocal max ratio 4.5. Anything above 1 is abnormal. They're 4.50. Okay, so that's way past abnormal. So that's magnitude. Frequency. You know, the first two boxes, again, not a big deal. The next three boxes, you kind of, what I recommend is you add those up, and this patient has over 30 clenches or grinds per night. Okay, so we need to protect this patient's teeth, but they have a good airway. So this is a great candidate for a guard. Okay, we're not going to talk about the impact of guards on the airway in this video, but we need to, at some point in time, determine, you know, as a clinician, okay, is this patient's teeth, are they worn due to an airway issue and subsequent airway triggered parafunction, or is this a true bruxer, such as the case here? If they're a true bruxer, they're a good candidate for a guard.